We're so glad that you're all here. Thank you for joining our Leadership Council series on talent recruitment and retention in Racine County. I am Greg Barron. I'm the president of RCEDC's board of directors. In 2018, Racine County engaged Manpower Group to complete a workforce demand and supply analysis for Racine County. That analysis showed workforce demand outstripping supply, with 5,540 more openings than skilled workers by 2021. Now, much has happened in the past 2 years, but one thing is abundantly clear: that talent continues to be in very much high demand, nationally, regionally, and in our community. So as you'll hear this morning from Rebekah Kowalski, the Vice President of Client Workforce Solutions for Manpower Group, the pandemic certainly accelerated trends that are affecting employers and their ability to attract and retain workers. We're also going to have HR experts from Andis Company and Lavelle Industries who will share how their organizations are adapting by changing the way they engage with prospective workers and existing employees. But first, Laura Millian, RCEDC's Deputy Director, will share an overview of RCEDC's talent efforts to help Racine County business attract and retain talent. If anyone has any questions for Rebekah or Laura or any of the panelists this morning, we've got the Q&A function or the chat at the bottom of our screen. Just submit your questions and we'll be sure to try to answer them as we roll along. And if not, we'll do a capture and we'll get back to you after the meeting. So Laura, over to you. Take it away, Laura.
Great, thank you, Greg. And good morning, everyone. Talent is central to RCEDC's work to attract new businesses to Racine County and to assist existing businesses with growth. And when we talk to businesses seeking a site in Southeast Wisconsin, we are frequently asked about availability of talent. And this corresponds to the finding of Area Development Magazine and their 35th annual survey of site selection executives. The availability of skilled talent ranks as the #1 site selection factor in that survey. So Jeremy, if you can flip to the next slide. You'll notice that it's higher than highway accessibility as well as energy availability. At the top of that list also are other talent-related factors of quality of life and labor costs. Availability of talent also drives decisions by existing businesses to expand. Over the last year, our staff conducted over 150 business call visits. As we talked to owners and managers, they shared how they navigated COVID-19, supply chain challenges, and talent shortages. Businesses are adjusting their operations to deal with those shortages and using creative ways to find, engage, and retain workers. Manufacturers are closely evaluating what new work they take on due to capacity issues related to open positions. And more automation is being deployed to increase efficiency and productivity. One area RCEDC is providing support is through talent attraction. More specifically, marketing Racine County is a great place to explore, live, and work. RCEDC launched GreaterRacineCounty.com in 2018 to showcase Racine County's quality of life, employers, and job opportunities. This long-term strategy supports Racine County employers in recruiting talent to their business. To drive traffic to Greater Racine County, a digital advertising campaign was added in 2019 to promote Racine County to individuals living in Northern Illinois. Advertising, which includes video, tells first-person stories to allow those seeing the ads to see themselves in our community. Through the end of 2021, the general Greater Racine County campaign reached almost 9 million impressions and drove 113,000 users to GreaterRacineCounty.com. Our work was made possible in partnership with Real Racine and the Mount Pleasant Tourism Commission. In 2021, we were also able to expand our marketing efforts by working with a consortium of manufacturers to undertake a digital advertising campaign focused on attracting manufacturing talent. We're building on our initial campaign to tell the story of Racine County's quality of life and job opportunities to attract manufacturing workers. We have 11 members in the consortium and are looking for additional members to continue this effort in 2022. If you're interested in learning more about the manufacturing campaign, please contact myself or Cassandra Hathaway, RCEDC's Economic Development Specialist focused on talent initiatives. As you'll hear this morning, the need for talent is not just affecting Racine County or Southeast Wisconsin. Attracting and retaining talent requires a multifaceted approach. RCEDC is committed to working with our employers and our partners, such as the Southeast Wisconsin Workforce Development Board, Racine County, RAMAC, University of Parkside, Carthage, and Gateway, to support Racine County businesses. Our work includes connecting businesses to partners, promoting best practices, sharing through Racine County CEO Roundtable and the Talent Roundtable, providing leadership development through Living as a Leader, and partnering with higher education institutions to expose young college talent to our community and businesses through internships. There's much work to be done to attract and retain talent in Racine County. Our work is best informed by understanding the trends impacting our employers and affecting decisions made by talent. And that's why we're pleased to have Rebekah Kowalski join us. She's Vice President of Client Workforce Solutions at Manpower. Rebekah was involved in the 2018 analysis conducted by Manpower, and she's a graduate of UW Parkside. Rebekah, we're looking forward to hearing your insights this morning.
Great, thank you, Laura. Yes, and proudly born and raised in Waterford, Wisconsin, actually. So I have a very soft spot in my heart for Racine County. And I am really happy to be with you all. So as Laura mentioned, we were involved in the supply and demand analysis for Racine County and Southeast Wisconsin back in 2018. It's wonderful, by the way, Laura, to have you walk through all of the amazing things that have been done to create a talent magnet for Racine County. And just excited to see how things have been progressing. So what I want to do, and Jeremy, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and just bump forward one slide. So my responsibility inside of Manpower Group is to lead our manufacturing practice, but also to look at just general workforce trends and horizons that we have globally, nationally, and in the Midwest. And my team is part of the larger Manpower Group, the world leader in innovative workforce solutions. And what we try to do is take all of the insights that we have for the millions of people that we place globally, and the hundreds of thousands that we place in the US, and the thousands that we place in Wisconsin, and be able to play back, trends around the work, the worker, and the employer like no one else on a market by market and industry basis. So today what I want to do is share with you some macro views of what's happening in the marketplace, things that we all need to be aware of, trends that we need to all be tracking so that we can make sure that we're making really good decisions on workforce strategy, workforce planning, because it certainly has gotten a lot more challenging out there. And yet, there were some of these things that we saw coming. Even in 2018, we were talking about some of these major secular trends, things that were happening that would structurally change the way we look at workforce. And so, they were a bit obscured in some ways by COVID, but in reality, what was happening is those trends were accelerating. So I'm going to walk you through those. We'll bring it a little bit closer to home in Racine County and Wisconsin, and then that will provide a nice segue into talking about what we call the Great Reawakening, right? And how to be more effective in attracting and retaining talent, given the major shifts that have happened. So Jeremy, if you want to take me forward. So let me start by talking about what Manpower Group is tracking. So for those of you who have heard me or someone else from Manpower Group talk before, we talk about these four forces of shifting demographics, technological revolution, individual choice, and client sophistication. And these really are the main pillars that we track because they're driving trends around the future of work here, just like they are everywhere else. Today, I want to focus on a couple of key ones in each of these areas, right? So the shifting demographics that we've all been watching play out for years, they do form the underpinning of the skills scarcity that we have been talking about. It's now exacerbated, of course, by the workforce leaving in higher numbers than anyone anticipated. Then we think about how demographics are changing in terms of the mix of individuals by age, by ability categories, by other kinds of demographics. And we know and have put emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So put simply, the workforce is changing. And it's more important than ever to recognize that those changes require us all to think about the diverse needs of diverse talent. Otherwise, we can't create a culture of inclusion and belonging. And those may feel a little bit like new words or maybe even overused words, depending on your context. But think about this in terms of consumer marketing, talent marketing, right? The need to segment your workforce and the talent that you're going after in a similar way to a consumer brands company, segmenting their buyers, right? And getting very intimate with that and thinking about the experience that'll need to be created for individuals to feel like they belong. The rising focus on ESG is not going away, and organizations and governments are having to respond. This is brought about by a number of things, but a big push has actually been by talent inside of the organization, right? And then there are some external factors, right? So watching the pressures of climate change, watching the regulatory pressures that are coming in, watching what consumers are looking for in terms of responsible production, responsible products, and then what the markets are betting on. What we're betting on is that this ushers in a further evolution to key jobs across almost every industry segment. And that results in the need to be much more strategic about how talent is managed and developed. So it is, a continual evolution of roles. And if you think about that tied to, for instance, energy, computing power, et cetera, and how that's done in a responsible and sustainable way, you have a view to how you might have to think about your talent planning and your talent development plans. So over to tech revolution, considering the role of robotics, AI, automation, is it really humans versus robots, or is it an and question? And what new skills will be required of talent as a result? Remember, we have gotten pushed here, right? Because of the scarcity of talent, we had this essential worker classification, which was really the first time we had used that phrase ever, in the popular lexicon. Everyone knew what it meant. And that did a bit obscure the, ongoing push to automate more, to digitize more, to bring in more robotics, right? Because there was an immediate pivot to getting products out the door, or to serving people, or to providing healthcare services. Now that wages have been continually pushing up, some of the business cases that were maybe just waiting for the right push are now pushed forward. And this progression continues in terms of the take up, right? So what are those new skills that will be required? The shift away from digitization to digital adoption is where we go next. New tools, new skills, new ways of doing things in order to compete. There is a lot of pressure on talent and on organizations to help the talent be ready as we move to actually adopting what we've put in place. All of us have to actually bring in new skill sets and be prepared to continually evolve them. And then finally, to the individual. Hybrid work and flexibility are the watchwords. And that is because people have had the opportunity to reset the scales in their heads. They are balancing the life they want to lead with what they need to lead it. So this forces HR to become, I mentioned before, that marketer, but really the ultimate marketer, marketing not only jobs, but career pathways and progressions, and centering in on the things that matter to individuals at the heart level, like their health, their family. Where it used to be enough to provide competitive packages, Now people are willing to make trade-offs in order to have that healthier life. And we'll touch on that a little bit more as part of us talking about that reawakening. So Jeremy, if we could go to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the long-term and immediate context we're facing at a little bit more granular level. So if you look at the numbers on the right, this is all about what is happening today that we're all feeling. New businesses launching at an incredibly high rate of speed. Look at those numbers, right? And these are individuals saying, you know what? I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to actually have the ultimate flexibility. I'm going to be my own boss. So the entrepreneurialism, new business rate is gone up pretty dramatically. Retirees are leaving at a higher than anticipated rate. So that breaks down to 10,800 per day. But just to give you a picture of the bigger number, in 2020, 28.6 million US boomers chose to leave the workforce. That was 11% higher than models had predicted. So basically you have a large number of individuals coming out of the workforce, or the talent pool that we conventionally think of as being something we can tap to fill jobs. When we think about the hourly worker, particularly those who were deemed essential, demand was incredibly high, a 67% increase. And that was playing out as the working pool numbers went down, not just from retirement, but also from enhanced benefits, sickness, the need to care for children, family at home to cover for shortages in daycare and schooling. So you have demand going up, the working pool going down. Of course, this drove those big pay increases, 6 to 18% on average for blue collar hourly workers. And so on the left, you think about things like there has been this concentration of demand on the hourly worker. Yet at the same time, automation and digitization is making more economic sense to more organization as that supply stays tight and wages go up. We're also seeing an increase in non-wage incentives. And I know our panel will be talking about that because I'm sure some of you are quite keen to understand what beyond wages individuals are responding to. And at the end of the day, of course, as we all know, we have more jobs than workers. So if you go to the next slide, Jeremy, that would be great. So closer to home, our picture just overall in Wisconsin is not as bad as the national average, where the worker participation rate has been 61.9%, bring below 62, which is a low that we haven't seen in a very long time. Our employment rate at the end of the year was 2.8% in Wisconsin, and that is a record low. So where participation is high and unemployment is low, we see that play out in wages, we see it play out in productivity. And we can also, of course, predict that technology will continue to be part of the solution, not just in manufacturing, obviously, but against all categories of jobs. Our population is aging, but it's also growing by 3.6%. But remember, this is very uneven. Departure from rural areas, so out-migration continues to be an issue. And so that is one of the things that I know we think about in, for instance, Racine County, where parts of it are quite rural and parts of it are centered around the city. And so how to make those more attractive for talent that we can entice from other parts of the country. On the right, you see who's advertising in Racine County, competing for that precious pool of talent, who's hiring and what are their top in demand roles. The look at the top skills, I thought was actually one of the more interesting things in this picture. So much of the top skills are in what we would call soft skills. And those are critical for where we're headed, particularly those skills that are around communication, analysis, and also the ability to learn to do new things. How do you select individuals in the workforce that can actually move with you? But again, it's a pretty competitive landscape. So where's some good news? One of the things that I would point out is I talked about technology needing to be part of the solution. There was a recent study I saw late last year by an organization called Parsifal, and I can get everyone the link to this study. That is a training and technology firm that focuses on manufacturing and logistics. And they found that both Gen Z and millennials were actually more interested in manufacturing roles than ever before, that the pandemic had actually put such a spotlight on those roles that they had shifted their thinking from I never want to do this to I may be interested, but they were quite specific in their feedback. As long as those roles were tech forward and more digital than not. Something to consider as a bit of a silver lining, something to consider in the talent planning and the marketing to your talent. So Jeremy, let's go to the next visual here. So a little bit about what we are tracking and predicting. We call it the Great Reawakening, and we believe that this is a moment where people and companies are realizing that the way people work has been changed for the long term. We've all been changed by the pandemic, and there's no going back. And so the characteristics of this awakening or these realizations are actually what we see as a series of endings as we enter a new era. And that requires new responses to a power dynamic that shifted much more to the worker. So first of all, the end of people choosing work over health. People expect employers to demonstrate they care about their well-being. You see this come back in survey after survey, analysis after analysis. To the end of the minimum wage, right? So it's now about what's required. There's no minimum, there's no maximum. With more open jobs than available workers and wages increasing in white and blue collars alike, the focus has to be towards the necessary compensation, not really just the minimum compensation level that's required. The end of family second, people want balance and flexibility. The end of pledges over progress. So people expect companies to demonstrate their commitment. And, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had turned off my video. I don't know how I did that. I apologize. Are you able to see me now?
Yep.
Okay,
all good,
I'm so
Rebekah.
sorry.
No problem.
I don't know what button what button I pressed, so I apologize. So, really putting the weight behind what is promised in terms of pledges. That is, about commitments to values that the organization has, commitments to career building and partnership with the individual. Basically, it's do what you say you'll do, right? And I just want to flesh out a couple of points here that I think are, probably speak to the reality that you're living in. So that end of employees choosing work over health. Absentee rates are sky high today. That, of course, exacerbates the already massive labor shortage. And employees choosing or being required not to work while they're sick, that, of course, creates some issues around flexible ways to fill gaps. But, on the other side of this coin, from a worker perspective, it's about the right to not work when they're sick and ensure that there are health benefits that are both mental and physical. So that, creates a whole new way of thinking about just how much talent you really need to manage unanticipated peaks and troughs. It's no longer possible to rely on just-in-time hiring. The other thing is, when we consider, those pandemic-specific jobs I mentioned earlier, and this isn't on this slide, but I think it's important to point out the end of these pandemic-specific jobs, not the end of the essential worker, but some of these jobs that were so specifically geared towards managing through this tough time, the jobs that were decimated by the pandemic are coming back. Others have emerged with strength, and they're now a standard in the job market. So, for example, hospitality and services is recovering fast. Non-COVID related healthcare is bouncing back. HR was not even on the list in 2020, and now it's 2% of all open roles. For those of you who are in HR, you're probably nodding your head saying you wish it was double or triple that number because there's been so much pressure on HR teams. Jobs that emerged with strength in the pandemic, they're now a standard in the market. So that's continued operations and logistics demand, IT and tech, marketing, PR. Some of those have doubled as companies are repositioning themselves for the new era. We are seeing, interestingly, a rise in generic job titles. And that is really tied to the desire to widen the net for candidates. So it's interesting, right? The view being if I make that job title a little bit more generic, the job description a little bit more generic, I can catch more people in the net, and maybe I can bring them up to speed through job training or other kinds of onboarding or accelerated training initiatives. So that has been a fascinating thing to watch as well. You want to go to the next visual, Jeremy? So I have this as it's time to rethink the employer-employee compact. So a lot of you are probably already doing this. And so I would just affirm that talent is rethinking what matters to them. And it's important to understand and stay close to them, just as you would stay close to your customer segmentation, your buyer profiles, et cetera. How are you segmenting out that talent and understanding what it is they need? There are some things that will be in common and some things that are quite specific to different profiles of individuals. And there's an expectation, and it's a heavy one. I won't lie to you. It's a heavy one that compact is going to be somewhat tailored to me. So I understand that we'll have in common our values, our culture. I understand even that career progressions might be common, but there are some things that I want to know are really flexible and adaptable to the things that I need, right? And that it really is almost a mass customization approach. So here are some short and long-term actions that I think are just helpful to think about. So short-term, responding to what workers want, right? It's a lot on flexibility, purpose, skills development, and competitive wages. And just a couple of things to keep in mind, right? When we talk about flexibility, we kind of all have this sense that none of us are going back to exactly what we were at. How many of us have our backdrops right now somewhere in our home, right? And even if we're not required to be at home, right, we do have this sense that this flexibility is there, and people want to know it's there for them as well, which is why you're seeing things like parent shifts at manufacturing firms, like from 9 to 3, and they're being heavily marketed that way to bring more individuals into the workforce. That inviting culture, right? So there's something in your message for me. Now, we always have to be very careful about this. You don't want to bring in talent that is ultimately not right for your culture, right? So your employer value proposition has to be true to your values, not trying to attract everybody, right? Your talent will find you out, but creating an inviting culture and being really clear about what you offer. And in that pride in your company and leaders who care really does show up to your talent. One thing that has gone forever is the distance that managers and leaders had from their talent. Now there's a proximity that maybe maybe it's good that we all revisit. We were put in the position of being a source of truth, a source of comfort, a source of empathy in ways that leaders had not been challenged to by and large. That isn't going away. So being very forward about that is good. Careers that move with the earnings that you deserve, right? So everyone wants career progression. And at the panel, when we were prepping last week, we talked about this idea that career pathways and progressions are for everyone, right? At every level, even if there isn't a direct link between the job they do today and the next level up, they might have to rotate out to take something else and then rotate back in. But telling them that up front and helping them understand that you've really thought through those career progressions for them and those pathways can be an important part of an employer value proposition. That we're going to use insights to understand your potential, right? Those could be coming from assessments. They could also be coming from regular career conversations that managers are having. Talent wants to know that you're doing something with that. and preparing for roles that may not even exist yet. We do that in our business with our associates, right? We know that the needle is moving in terms of the skills that people will require. So we've invested quite heavily and packaged up pathways for individuals, whether it's in IT or advanced manufacturing or in finance, so that individuals can build the skills that they'll need for the job that they'll take tomorrow. And I would submit to you that all of you can be doing the same thing. There's certainly a vast array of educational opportunities sitting in your backyard with Gateway and with Parkside and with Carthage. And that's amazing, right? Those are crown jewels in the community. How do you take advantage of that and partner? It's really, not all organizations can build that all internally. So those are some thoughts. And I would just say this idea of rethinking that contract or compact is a recognition that power is shifting more to the worker, but that can be an extremely good thing as we start to think about talent as that ultimate renewable resource. Hearing from them what they need and want and listening to that lends itself to better attraction and retention in the ed, but it is a bit different than the way we've done it before. And so that evolution requires all of us to think very creatively about what we do next. And with that, Jeremy, we can go to my closing slide. And I would invite any of you who have questions or are looking for some of the data points that I shared today, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I think I'm handing it back to you, Laura.
I'll jump right in here, Rebekah. Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation. That's going to do a great job setting up the balance of our discussion. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I think we can all agree, all our attendees, that local businesses in our area are experiencing firsthand the trends that Rebekah shared. So now we're pleased to have Jane Eickhoff, Kim Brooks, and Bridget Savaglia join us this morning to share their approach to talent recruitment and retention in face of the trends that Rebekah outlined for us. So we have several prepared questions, and I'm going to ask our panelists to respond to each of the questions. And what we'll do is rotate through. And then I'm watching the Q&A at the bottom, and hopefully we'll get some great questions from our audience that we can direct to the appropriate panelists. So I'm going to have the panelists respond in the following order. We'll go Jane and Kim and Bridget, and then we're going to get Rebekah to jump in. And the first off, I think a lot of people in the audience are familiar with Andis and Lavelle, but please tell us a little bit about your company. And let's get right into it. How many open positions do you have, and what type of positions are you recruiting for right now? So Jane, I'm going to ask you to kick it off for us.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me this morning. So Andis is family owned and operated since 1922. We're actually celebrating 100 years this year, so really excited. Behind me, you can kind of see some of our products. So primarily we manufacture clippers and trimmers for professional beauty and barbering, retail, as well as animal grooming. I know you've got Kim Brooks on here as well today, also from Andis. We kind of have two fairly different markets that we recruit for, and that offers different challenges for each of us. So I have primarily recruited for our union positions in the machine shop, in material handling, in repair and maintenance, and then also work with some of our college students in our engineering intern roles.
Jane, how many open positions are you looking at right now?
It's not as bad actually as it has been. We did a push recently. I probably have a handful, and I will say maybe 5 or 6 in the machine shop right now, probably 4 in material handling. And we did some overhiring of recent to kind of prepare for some things too. So I'm feeling like we're in a pretty good spot right now with some of those positions.
Well, let's ask your colleague Kim. So the responsibilities that you have, Kim, what is it looking like at Andis in terms of open positions, and what type of positions are you looking for?
Sure. So I do the office recruiting. Majority of my positions fall to like office hourly support, engineers, analysts, managers, buyers, sourcing agents, so positions like that. Unlike Jane, we are seeing an uptick on the office side. So right now we have about 15 open positions and growing. A lot of our positions recently have been add to staff roles, which is great because it just shows how stable and growing our company is.
Great, thank you, Kim. And Bridget, can you tell us a little bit about Lavelle Industries and what's your situation in terms of open positions and types of jobs that you're recruiting for?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me join as well. Like Andis, Lavelle is actually heading into our 112th year. And so we're happy to celebrate an anniversary. So congrats to you guys as well. Out in Burlington, so west of the I. So thanks, Rebekah, for that shout out, west of the I. We're out here too, but we are famous for rubber and plastic manufacturing that we do out in Burlington. We are, like most manufacturing companies, as we've been talking about, we are hiring for some roles. My responsibility is all of the open roles in our organization in Burlington, as well as our facility that we have out in Whitewater. So a couple roles in our production facility. We are a union in our Burlington facility as well. And then a couple open roles. I've been lucky to just hire on some fantastic people onto the HR team to help with our added roles that we are also growing and finding lots of great stability. So I guess I would highlight our plant manager in Burlington is retiring in March. And so I'm tasked with filling her shoes. So that's one of the things that we're working on. But I appreciate being here today and having this conversation and hearing some of that great info that Rebekah's shared as well.
Well, we're so glad that everybody's here, and I'm keeping my eye on the Q&A, and I'm looking for some questions. I've got two awesome questions. They're both directed at Rebekah, so don't you go anywhere, Rebekah. We're coming back at you with a couple of key questions here. But let's go to our next question. Racine County businesses and manufacturers have been focused on finding and attracting quality talent now, obviously, for years. And as Rebekah shared, COVID-19 has accelerated the demographic trends, making it more difficult to attract talent. Some of those data points that Rebekah pointed out were pretty stunning in terms of the movement. How is your company approaching attracting talent in general? What do you see as the biggest challenges as you reflect on what's happening within your company and in the landscape that Rebekah talked to? And are there certain tactics or sources of talent where you're finding success? So we're going to go in the same order. So I'm going to go Jane and then Kim and then ask Bridget to reflect on that. Jane, what do you think?
Sure. As far as challenges in a lot of the areas that I recruit for, we are willing to train. So it's not so much finding someone who has that specific background, but it's finding someone who wants to learn, wants to be here every day. And sometimes it's interviewing 10 people to find a candidate like that. As far as some of the tactics that we have deployed kind of recent, I think you have to have a balance, obviously, of what you're paying your people as well as how you treat your people. And I feel like Andis has always done a phenomenal job of how they've treated their employees. So we kind of did a push recently more on the financial end of things for some of our production area. We increased our base rate. We increased our shift differential. We added a sign-on bonus. We added a referral bonus for our internal staff. And I think all of those things kind of at the same time really helped with a supply or a flow of candidates. We've tried to be creative as well with looking at avenues that we haven't in the past. We recently partnered with the Racine high schools and identified students who are in pathways that we utilize here. And recently started 3 high school students in our machine shop. They come and work 4 hours every day after school. And it's been phenomenal so far and something that I hope to see kind of grows as well. And then we continue to foster and establish relationships with the technical schools in our area offering tours, talking with their classes, attending the events that they have as well, because it's a wonderful pipeline of students for us as well.
Great, thank you, Jane. And let's move over to Kim. Anything you'd add from your perspective in terms of your different responsibilities at Andis?
Yeah, so on the office side, our challenge is finding talent with experience. Some of our more recent roles have been very unique as we create the job descriptions for them. So finding that unique talent has been a challenge for us. And surprisingly, on the office side, I am having a lot of candidates who don't even show up for their scheduled phone interviews. So that seems to be an increasing challenge for professional level jobs as well. Some of the things we're doing on the office side for attracting talent is we're trying to make our job descriptions more appealing. So really focusing on the highlights of the role, the company culture, and how the candidate can make an impact in the organization. We're also doing sign-on bonuses for relocation. So we are starting to target candidates outside of the Wisconsin area too. So our sign-on bonuses help offset those relocation costs for them. And then we are looking to hire more remote-based associates. So in the past, our remote positions have been ideal for like those in marketing or sales, but we have been a little more creative on the remote recruiting. And we're actually starting to look at electrical engineers outside of the Wisconsin area too. So kind of really expanding our search to target more of those remote people and getting creative in how we look at different jobs being remote-based. We're also doing a lot of promoting of our company on social media. So we're using our social media avenues to really showcase who Andis is and how individuals can let their voice be heard within the organization. And then some of our success stories have really come from LinkedIn on the office side. So really just using your internal network, whether it's people that you're connected to or your managers are connected to, but just making sure you're getting out there and talking with people and seeing who might be a good fit for your positions.
Thank you, Kim. Bridget, what about your perspective on certain tactics or sources of talent that you're focused on?
I think Jane and Kim have already shared some really good strategies. I think we're in a time when there's a lot of special cause conditions, less people there for the jobs that we're looking for. And then of course, the wage inflation just kind of continues to go, and it appears to be no ceiling, or what does that look like? So how do we adjust to that? I would say for Lavelle, what I love is that we have a lot of great agency partners that help us source for some hard to fill positions, whether you're talking on the production side or the office side. But what I love is that I get to work for the company for which I'm hiring. And I think that's part of our success, is to be able to really talk authentically about the great things about Lavelle from a culture perspective that we can offer to candidates. The biggest thing I think we found that has helped us, regardless of the position, is the speed at which we move someone through the process. I'll give you an example for plant manager. It would not be unusual pre-COVID to take a month to work a candidate through the process. We are trying to stick to a week, 2 weeks tops, because people have a lot of other conversations that they're having with other companies. And so we want to make sure on the production side, we've tried to commit to within 24 to 48 hours without compromising the quality of person that we bring in the door. How can we as a team adjust our process in order to get someone quickly through what we need to do in order to make sure that we have that right criteria? And then outside of the office roles, within a week, somebody should have the opportunity to engage with us on a really close level, to have that conversation with us and be able to confidently move forward with an opportunity if we're able to offer that to them. So I'd say that's a key for us, has been really speed and adjusting our process on our end as much as possible to be responsive to candidates.
Great, thank you, Bridget. Someone fired off a question to me right now, jumping on one of the points that Rebekah made. So I'm really interested in exploring this idea. The idea of the Great Resignation making headlines. Is your company seeing resignations? What are you hearing from employees about maybe their intent to leave? And what the heck are you doing about it? So Jane.
I'm kind of happy to report that I don't feel like we've seen a huge increase in resignations. I wanted to kind of verify the data with my director, who's the person that kind of tracks that, and she said we've been kind of holding steady, and I think some of that is some of the retention strategies that we've used as well, which I know is a future question, so I'll hold a little there, but we've been pretty good.
Okay, thank you. Kim, from your vantage point?
I would echo what Jane has to say too on the office side. If we do have resignations, ours are actually retirements, which I think Rebekah had touched on that too. We have seen an increase in retirements recently, but as far as just general resignations, not too much on the office side. If one of our associates does resign though from an office position, we do typically kind of evaluate their value to the company and see how we can work on ways to retain them as well.
Kim, is this like a significant blip in earlier retirements that you're seeing?
You know, I can recall one individual did retire a couple years earlier than we anticipated. So I don't know if it's been the pandemic kind of giving that extra push where people, like Rebekah mentioned, are focusing on themselves versus on, overloaded by work. So I think a lot of them are kind of taking that step back and realizing that this is the right time to retire instead of that future target age that they were looking at before.
Do you think, Kim, like just in the discussions that you're having, that over the next year or two, once we get behind the pandemic, that people, have an experience that will actually accelerate future retirement plans?
Yeah, it's hard to say at this time because a lot of our retirements come out of the blue. We anticipate them staying, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, we didn't really expect that person to retire now. But it's kind of hard to say at this point.
Bridget, what's your take and your company's view on that Great Resignation?
Yeah, we have not seen as much of an impact of that. Probably some early retirements. What we have stepped up is our stay interviews. We have a process where every week employees check in with their manager. So we've, make sure you're enhancing that, having those conversations with employees. I think the biggest challenge on the production side is childcare. Rebekah referenced that earlier. COVID, unfortunately, like you get a snow day once in a while as a parent, you can manage that.
Yeah.
But COVID sometimes with kids being out of school is like snow day after snow day after snow day after snow day. Not all parents have that flexibility to be at home with their kids or they have to, they don't have a choice. I think that's been a bigger impact for us is, what resources are out there to help parents with childcare, and how can Lavelle support that? How can we support the community in building that more for families so that they can be responsive to those COVID expectations from schools, but also be available for their work.
Thanks, Bridget. Back to you, Jane. You were mentioning in our last question, efforts around retention. How are you aggressively going about retaining your current employees? What is the strategy?
I think some of the things we did for retention or for recruitment helped in retention as well. Obviously, in increasing our wages, we had to do that internally with staff as well, with shift differentials, offering that sign-on bonus, but also wanting to add a referral bonus. If you're a good employee and you know other good employees, ask them to come and I'd be happy to pay you as opposed to someone, externally to fill a position.
What kind of value would be on that type of bonus? How many dollars?
For a referral bonus, we're doing $1,000, regardless of position.
Great.
And there's no limit on that. So I tell people I'd be happy to pay you $10,000 if you want to find 10 strong employees. And, we pay that out after they complete a probationary period, making sure that someone's going to stay. We recently started an ambassador program, identifying individuals who are kind of like the welcome wagon. These are not the individuals who will necessarily be training someone, but someone that is making sure that new staff aren't eating alone on their first days here, are periodically saying, how's things going? Is there anything else we can do? Are there tricks of the trade I can share with you? And just kind of making sure that people feel, really welcomed here. And I also think being family owned and operated, I've worked in more of corporate organizations before. Matt and Laura, our owners, do a really wonderful job with making employees feel valued. As I mentioned, we're celebrating, 100 years this year. We've got a celebration planned once a month for all 12 months this year. They will do things periodically like buy lunch for every employee in the company. And we try to do a lot of fun things as well. We had a bags tournament in the building during work time, over the summer, just trying to have it not be all work and add some play as well. Obviously, growth opportunities, whether it's a career path or just trying something new. We do a lot of promotions within. And then we have an on-site health clinic, which offers employees the opportunity to get something checked out or get some advice, not have to pay for that, as well as be able to do it before, after work on a lunch hour, are just some of the things.
Thanks, Jane. Kim, anything to add from the Andis perspective?
Sure. A lot of those techniques do echo on the office side too. A lot of them are used within the whole company. But some of the different things that we've been doing for office professionals to kind of attract and retain talent, we have adjusted to more of those hybrid work schedules, allowing individuals the flexibility to do some days in office and some days remote. Like I mentioned earlier, we have increased our remote recruiting. So looking for talent outside of the area and just being open to having associates work remote fully. Also, we've been working with our associates through a program called Catalytic Coaching, and that allows our associates to work closely with their managers to develop a career path for themselves, focusing on short and long-term goals and how they're going to get there. Also, as a company, we do offer profit sharing to our associates on the office side as well. And then we have increased our 401k matching too. So our company portion has been increased to help retain and attract talent as well. And then as far as on the onboarding side, so we have a process similar to the ambassador program. For office associates, we have them do meet and greets with key business partners for about 2 weeks, their first 2 weeks in the company, really getting an understanding of what an individual does and how their role in the company is going to partner with the individual that they're meeting with. So really giving them a chance to get acclimated to our culture and our business partners as well. And then we also have conversations with our leaders too, to make sure that they're keeping their associates in the forefront and making sure that they consider their needs and wants as well.
Thank you, Kim. Lavelle's perspective, Bridget, on these recruitment and retention efforts.
Yeah, I know we're heading, in the interest of time, we have done some of the things that Jane and Kim have shared. I would say, in addition, we have seen a record number of production team members move into office or professional technical roles. I think that's key. How do we continue training people on the floor who are interested in moving into other roles? That's a phenomenon we've seen in this market is, not that we have lower wage workers, but on the lower end of the wage, people are moving up in wage plus responsibility. How can we continue to support that so we keep those good team members in the door? And then just keeping on top of benefits that employees want. What do they value? How can we offer those in alignment with what they're looking for? And keeping focus on the culture. What's the why? Why are people here? Why do they enjoy working at Lavelle? And we want to make sure that we continue moving that forward. But I would say the number one for me is the lead of our professional development program, which predominantly has focused on our office group. How can we enhance what we're offering to our production team members to give them the skills that they are looking for to help them move forward? We can't hire all of them, so how can we help everyone be set up for success so that they can keep moving forward in their paths?
Great, thank you, Bridget. This is so fascinating. I could be doing this all day, but the time is upon us. So I just want to squeeze in one more question before our closing remarks. And Jeremy, there are a number of really great questions in the Q&A, and maybe we could get back to these people who have submitted these questions and get answers to them. I want to jump on this one. Rebekah, this one's coming your way. Our questioner is interested in hearing more about how AI, artificial intelligence, plays a role in candidate vetting when in job search. What's your perspective on that, Rebekah, and how is technology going to really revolutionize our approach here?
So I think there are two sides to this, and I think Bridget, Kim, and Jane will probably have some opinions as well.
Yeah.
But I think where the AI is super helpful is actually determining what kind of talent marketing is really most effective. What reaches are landing, what approaches, what language, what is helping, grow the pipeline. And the AI grows with you, and you can actually become much more predictive and much more focused then on those dollars. So that's huge. Where AI gets a little hairy is when we're talking about the vetting process. And why that is so is because, unknowingly you can bake bias into that vetting process. And so that would be the watch out. It can be extremely valuable, right? But you have to be very conscious of the design and real clear about, are you hiring for exact match? Are you hiring for potential? And making sure you don't artificially limit the pipeline that is coming in. Where I see the biggest yields really is understanding what messages work to pull individuals into your pipeline. And that is so much more cost effective as each year goes by than the wider casting of the net.
Thank you for that, Rebekah. And we're right on time here. I have a few concluding remarks, but first I want to give a major shout out to Rebekah and Jane and Kim and Bridget for this fascinating discussion. We really appreciate you joining us and engaging in this discussion. For everyone attending, this event has been recorded and will be delivered to you. So everyone who has registered. And as I mentioned, if you have any further questions that have not been answered today, we're going to include our speakers' contact information, and Jeremy will pull the questions out of the Q&A that we didn't have time to get to, and we'll get responses back. A reminder that our next Leadership Council meeting will take place on Tuesday, April 12th. And we're going to discuss Wisconsin's small business financing solutions at that meeting. So I think we're going to have another great discussion. Just a few other events that you might find beneficial. Living as a Leader provides a 12-month leadership development series that helps you and your organization's leaders improve the employee experience and drive business results. Leaders at all levels can attend this series. Most commonly, participants are individuals at the supervisory and middle management levels of leadership. You can find out more about this great series by contacting Laura, who talked to us earlier. RCEDC will be hosting Business and Beers in Burlington, which is part of the Business Growth Solutions series. That'll be on Friday, March 11th from 2 to 4 p.m. Local business owners will share their stories, how they're utilizing local resources to help navigate their way to success. The event is $20 for RCEDC members and $30 for non-members. And finally, please note your calendar for our 2022 RCEDC annual meeting. We're really excited to be back in person at the Delta Hotel in Mount Pleasant. And that date is Thursday, April 14th. So mark it down. We'll get more information to everybody as we really narrow down the date or the time for that date. So all this information, of course, can be accessed at RCEDC's website. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. I hope you've found our session informative. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Bye-bye for now, everybody.